November 13th, 1942, 11:01 a.m. The USS Juno explodes with such force that her 6,000-ton hull simply vanishes from the surface of the Pacific. What Naval Command never disclosed was that 100 sailors survived the initial blast, floating in life rafts just 50 miles from Allied-controlled waters. Rescue ships were within 6 hours of their position. For 76 years, families believed their sons died instantly in the explosion that killed the 5 Sullivan brothers. The wreck, discovered in 2018 at 14,200 feet, tells a different story. Evidence from the debris field proves the Juno didn't sink immediately. She broke apart slowly, giving her crew time to abandon ship. Recently, declassified radio transcripts reveal rescue operations were deliberately delayed for 8 days. What strategic calculation was worth sacrificing 687 American sailors? And why did the Navy let families believe their loved ones died quickly, rather than reveal they perished waiting for a rescue that never came? The answer lies in Operation Watchtower's intelligence security protocols. Radio intercepts confirmed that Japanese submarines were monitoring Allied rescue frequencies around Guadalcanal. Admiral William Halsey faced an impossible choice: rescue 100 Juno survivors and reveal the positions of 3 American submarines conducting classified operations, or sacrifice those men to protect strategic assets worth 10 times their number. Declassified Pacific Fleet Command logs show the decision was made within 2 hours of the Juno's destruction. The survivors, floating in life rafts 50 miles from safety, became acceptable losses in a larger strategic calculation. What families were never told is that their sons did not die in the explosion. They died 8 days later from exposure, thirst, and shark attacks, while rescue ships waited for the all-clear signal that never came. The Sullivan brothers, George, Francis, Joseph, Madison, and Albert, became symbols of patriotic sacrifice for a nation hungry for heroes. Their deaths sparked the sole survivor policy that prevents siblings from serving in the same combat unit. But the sanitized version of their deaths, a quick explosion taking all hands, was far more palatable than the truth that surviving Sullivan brothers and nearly 100 other sailors died slowly, watching the horizon for ships that deliberately stayed away. The Navy's calculation was cold, but militarily sound. Japanese submarine I-26, which torpedoed the Juno, remained in the area specifically to track rescue operations. Any American rescue ship would have revealed not just itself, but the positions of 3 submarines conducting covert operations behind Japanese lines. These submarines, USS Argonaut, USS Nautilus, and USS Narwhal, were delivering critical intelligence about Japanese fleet movements that would later prove decisive in the Battle of Santa Cruz. Documents found in Naval Intelligence archives show that Admiral Chester Nimitz himself signed off on the decision. He noted in a classified memo dated November 14th that the loss of Task Force 67 intelligence assets would jeopardize fleet operations throughout the Solomon campaign. Recovery operations must be delayed until area security can be established. To understand the strategic context of this sacrifice, we need to rewind to the beginning of 1942, when the war in the Pacific hung in the balance. The USS Juno was commissioned in February 1942 as an Atlanta-class light cruiser, a new design with known engineering vulnerabilities. Naval Engineering Corps reports from her sea trials noted that her ammunition cooling systems were suboptimal and could lead to catastrophic failure in prolonged combat operations. These concerns were shelved due to the urgent need for ships in the Pacific theater. That same month, the 5 Sullivan brothers enlisted together after the attack on Pearl Harbor, explicitly requesting to serve on the same ship despite Navy regulations discouraging the practice. Their request was granted as a morale-boosting publicity story, and they were assigned to the Juno. This decision would later haunt the Navy and lead to a permanent policy change. By July 1942, Operation Watchtower, the Allied offensive to seize and defend Guadalcanal, was taking shape under Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner. The cruiser Juno was assigned to Task Force 67, part of the screening force protecting the carriers and transports delivering Marines to Guadalcanal's contested shores. Naval historian Dr. Marcus Willington of the Naval War College explains, the Solomon Islands campaign was the first major Allied offensive in the Pacific. Everything was at stake: momentum, morale, and military advantage. The Japanese were determined to retake Guadalcanal, and we were equally determined to hold it. This created a pressure cooker of naval operations that led to desperate measures and calculated risks. October 1942 saw a dramatic escalation in Japanese submarine activity around the Solomon Islands. Naval intelligence intercepted and decoded messages indicating that at least 12 submarines had been deployed specifically to monitor and report on Allied naval movements. Their presence created a visibility problem. Any rescue operation would be immediately reported, compromising operational security. By early November 1942, the situation around Guadalcanal had reached a breaking point. The Japanese were attempting to land reinforcements, and the U.S. Navy was committed to preventing this at all costs. On November 8th, Admiral Turner received intelligence that a major Japanese convoy was approaching. This convoy would later be called the Tokyo Express, and it carried enough troops and supplies to potentially overwhelm the Marines holding Henderson Field. Admiral Daniel Callahan, commanding Task Force 67, received urgent orders on November 12th to intercept and destroy the Japanese reinforcement convoy at any cost. The Juneau, despite engineering reports indicating ammunition cooling system malfunctions, was ordered to join the task force heading into what would become known as Iron Bottom Sound, due to the number of ships that would soon lie at its bottom. The naval battle of Guadalcanal in the early hours of November 13, 1942. In the darkness, American and Japanese ships engaged in chaotic point-blank combat. The Juno was hit by enemy fire that damaged her port side, but she remained operational throughout the fierce night battle. By dawn, the American force had succeeded in preventing Japanese troop landings, but at heavy cost. The Juno, along with several other damaged American ships, was ordered to withdraw to safer waters for repairs. At 10:48 a.m., as the battered American task force limped away from Guadalcanal, Japanese submarine I-26, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Minoru Yokota, spotted the damaged American ships. Patrol reports recovered from Japanese naval archives confirm that I-26 had specific orders to target damaged vessels withdrawing from battle, maximizing the psychological impact of losses. At 10:59 a.m., I-26 fired a spread of torpedoes from 1,200 yards at USS San Francisco, but one torpedo continued past its intended target. At precisely 11:01 a.m., that torpedo struck USS Juno on the port side, exactly where she had been damaged in the earlier night battle. What happened next was catastrophic beyond prediction. The torpedo hit triggered a chain reaction through the already damaged ammunition storage areas. Juno's entire forward ammunition magazine detonated with such force that observers on other ships initially reported she had disappeared from the water. But close examination of after-action reports filed by officers on nearby ships reveals a crucial detail. Juno did not vanish instantly. Lieutenant Commander Howard Greenlee, aboard USS Helena, reported that the explosion separated the ship into sections. The bow disappeared immediately, but the stern section remained partially afloat for approximately 6 minutes before finally submerging. Those 6 minutes made all the difference between a total loss and a survivable disaster. Survivors later testified that those precious minutes allowed dozens of sailors to escape the sinking stern section. At 11:02 a.m., just 60 seconds after the explosion, the first distress calls from survivors in the water were received by USS Helena and other ships in the task force. Radio logs show clear SOS transmissions stating that Juno was hit, survivors were in the water, and immediate assistance was requested. By 11:07 a.m., Juno's stern finally submerged completely, but approximately 100 men had managed to reach life rafts and flotation devices. They were 50 miles from friendly controlled waters, with multiple Allied ships within 6 hours sailing distance. At 11:15 a.m., USS Helena's radio operator received a transmission from survivors saying estimate 100 men in the water, medical attention required, position redacted, weather favorable for recovery. Then came the fateful order that would doom those men. At 11:30 a.m., Fleet Radio Intelligence intercepted Japanese transmissions indicating that submarine WWII was maintaining position specifically to track any rescue operations. Admiral Halsey, receiving this intelligence, ordered all ships to maintain radio silence and to continue withdrawal from the area. What followed was 8 days of calculated abandonment that the Navy would conceal for 3/4 of a century. Captain Gilbert Hoover of USS Helena, the senior surviving officer in the task force, made the initial decision not to stop for survivors because of the submarine threat. This was standard naval procedure at the time, but what was not standard was the subsequent delay in sending dedicated rescue craft after the submarine threat had been assessed. Declassified submarine patrol logs reveal that USS Ballard, a patrol submarine operating near the site, conducted periscope observations of the Juno survivors beginning on November 14th. The submarine captain, Lieutenant Commander Donald McGregor, logged daily survivor counts and positions, but he was under strict orders not to surface or attempt rescue because of operational security concerns. On November 15th, McGregor logged that he observed approximately 80 survivors on 3 life rafts. He noted that men appeared to be rationing water supplies, that weather conditions were favorable, and that he was maintaining observation as ordered. By November 16th, the number had dropped to 65. By November 18th, only 40 survivors remained. McGregor's log notes that shark activity was observed around the rafts, that several injured men were visible, and that repeated requests for rescue authorization were denied by command. What the logs make clear is that Fleet Command was receiving daily updates on the survivors' condition and declining numbers. The decision not to rescue was reaffirmed daily for over a week. Alan Hayne, one of only 10 survivors eventually rescued, later recounted that they kept telling each other that ships would come. The Sullivans were still alive for the first 3 days. George lasted the longest. He kept saying help was just over the horizon. They rationed water, but it was not enough. The sharks came every afternoon like they were on a schedule. On November 21st, 8 days after the sinking, with only 10 survivors still alive, rescue was finally authorized when intelligence confirmed Japanese submarines had withdrawn from the area. By then, nearly 90 men who had survived the initial explosion had perished from dehydration, exposure, or shark attacks. The cover-up began immediately. Navy communiques to families stated that all hands were lost in the explosion. The standard letter sent to the Sullivan family read, "The department deeply regrets to inform you that your sons were lost in action in the South Pacific." The ship was struck by enemy torpedoes and sank immediately. No mention was made of survivors or the 8-day wait for rescue. This fabrication served multiple purposes. It spared families the anguish of imagining their loved ones dying slowly while awaiting rescue. It protected operational security regarding submarine intelligence gathering in the Solomon Islands. And most importantly, it shielded the Navy from questions about the decision to delay rescue operations. For 76 years, the truth remained hidden in classified documents and at the bottom of Iron Bottom Sound. Then on March 17, 2018, the research vessel R.V. Petrel, funded by the late Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, located the wreckage of USS Juno, resting at a depth of 14,200 feet. What the wreckage revealed contradicted the official narrative. The ship had not disappeared in a single catastrophic explosion. It had broken into several large sections. The bow section showed evidence of the magazine explosion, but the stern section was relatively intact, supporting survivor accounts that it remained afloat for several minutes after the initial blast. Dr. Robert Ballard, renowned oceanographer who has studied numerous naval wrecks, analyzed the Petrel findings. He said the debris field tells a story of progressive breakup rather than instantaneous destruction. There is clear evidence that the stern section remained buoyant long enough for evacuation procedures to be initiated. Most telling was the discovery of deployed life rafts and emergency equipment scattered across the debris field. These rafts would not have had time to deploy in an instantaneous sinking scenario. Their presence confirmed that crew members had time to abandon ship in an organized manner. Perhaps most significant was the 2019 recovery of the ship's emergency radio transmitter, which was found with its operational log still partially legible. The log confirmed 8 days of distress calls sent from survivor rafts, with diminishing signal strength as batteries weakened and operators succumbed to exposure. These physical discoveries prompted renewed interest in the Juno incident. A Freedom of Information Act request, filed by maritime historian Dr. Eliza Montgomery in 2019, finally succeeded in declassifying Operation Watchtower communication logs that had remained sealed for over 75 years. Those logs contained the smoking gun. On November 14th, a communication from Admiral Halsey to Admiral Nimitz reported survivors from the Juno sinking and said rescue operations were deferred due to ultra-intelligence requirements in Sector 4. It said submarine assets could not be compromised, and it requested guidance on the survivor situation. Nimitz replied the same day. "Maintain operational security," he ordered. Intelligence assets were priority 1. He directed that recovery operations be delayed until submarine surveillance confirmed the area was clear of enemy observation capabilities. The most heartbreaking revelation came from Alan Hayne's previously unpublished memoir, discovered in his son's attic in 2020. Hayne, who died in 1982, had written a detailed account of the 8 days in the water, but he had been required to sign non-disclosure agreements as a condition of his continued naval service. Hayne wrote that the 5 Sullivans initially survived the sinking. He described men bunched on a single raft, Francis injured while the others helped him. On the second day, American planes appeared overhead. They fired flares. The planes waggled their wings, and the men thought rescue was coming. By the 4th day, Francis had died. Madison died next. The others held out hope longer. For the families of the Juno's crew, these revelations were both painful and vindicating. Catherine Sullivan Lomas, niece of the 5 Sullivan brothers, told reporters in 2021 that the family had built its peace around the idea that their uncles died instantly while serving their country. Learning that they survived only to be abandoned is heartbreaking, but at least now we know the truth. They did not just die in an explosion. They died waiting for their country to come back for them. The USS Juno tragedy raises profound questions about the moral calculus of warfare. Was the sacrifice of 100 men justified by the protection of submarine intelligence operations? Military ethicists remain divided. The moral burden is heavy. Retired Admiral James Stavridis observes, "These decisions are the heaviest burden of command." Halsey was protecting intelligence assets that potentially saved thousands of lives across the Pacific theater. But knowing that men could have been rescued and were not, that is a burden no commander takes lightly. The Juno incident exemplifies what military strategists call unit sacrifice, the deliberate acceptance of certain losses to protect broader strategic advantages. Such calculations have always been part of warfare, but they are rarely acknowledged to the public or to families of the fallen. The word sacrifice carries uncomfortable weight. Dr. Elizabeth Cohen, military ethics professor at Georgetown University, explains that what is troubling about the Juno case is not just the decision to delay rescue, it is the deliberate falsification of how those men died. There is a difference between classified operational details and actively misleading families about the circumstances of death. The discovery of the wreck and subsequent revelations have forced a re-examination of the Sullivan brothers' legacy. Rather than simply being symbols of patriotic sacrifice who died instantly in service to their country, they have become symbols of something more complex, the hidden costs of strategic decisions and the abandoned warriors who paid the price. The truth is complicated. For the Navy, this revelation has prompted a painful institutional reckoning. In 2022, the Naval History and Heritage Command issued a formal acknowledgement stating that historical records confirm survivors of USS Juno remained alive for days following the sinking. The decision not to attempt immediate rescue was based on operational security concerns. The Navy acknowledges that families were not provided accurate information about the circumstances of their loved ones' deaths. The question remains, how should we remember the men of the Juno? As victims of abandonment or as necessary sacrifices in a greater struggle? Perhaps they were both, men who gave their lives twice for their country, first in battle and then in the agonizing days that followed when strategic calculation demanded their final sacrifice. Today, the Juno Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery has been updated with a new inscription acknowledging the full truth. To the men of USS Juno who perished in battle, and those who survived the sinking only to be lost awaiting rescue, their sacrifice, in all its dimensions, will never be forgotten. The word truth appears at the center of that memorial. The story of USS Juno reminds us that behind every strategic decision in war lies human consequences that may remain hidden for generations. It teaches us that heroism exists not just in the moment of battle, but in the quiet endurance of those who never stopped hoping their country would come back for them. If there is one lesson from the Juno tragedy, it is that we owe our fallen warriors the dignity of truth, however painful, rather than the comfort of convenient narratives. Only in acknowledging the full cost of victory can we truly honor those who paid it. The imperative now is honor and dignity. Don't let forgotten naval histories remain buried at sea. Ocean Attacks brings these crucial stories to light through meticulous research and declassified documents. Subscribe now to explore more revelations from naval warfare's hidden past and ensure these sailors' sacrifices are finally acknowledged. Join our mission to uncover the truth beneath the waves, because history left undiscovered is history repeated.